world.
One thing that jumped out at me, that another comment that she made, Zach, and I'm curious to get Heather's reaction too, that she talks about I kept my cool, a lifetime of dealing with men trying to throw me off. I kept my cool, aided by a lifetime of dealing with men to throw me off. When I read that, I thought about her husband, actually, of all that this woman had to put up with. And I think that she might have resonated with women better if she'd been a little more forthcoming. But then she was in this difficult position because people still like Bill.
Yeah, I mean, I personally didn't take it that it was Bill Clinton. I mean, if you look at her history, both in the Senate, I mean, which she has talked about in the past, and her time as First Lady dealing with members of Congress on the Hill. I mean, she has a history of being talked down to, a history of sometimes not being taken seriously, a history of men being intimidated by her and lashing out. And she has talked about this a lot. And I think that her experience. I mean, women would speak better to me, but I think her experience, is something that a lot of women can relate to. But women jump in.
I'm Heather, just please get in here. I'm curious what you think.
The only time I've ever been intimidated was by Ken Langone, who went into one of his tirades, but he intimidates men too with these things. So it turned out it's not about.
I think Ken Langone is a big teddy bear.
Until he turns on his fury. Windmills going at 6'5". But the thing that was fascinating to me was the contrast between her excerpt and reading Shattered. And Philip Raines, I think it was, came in and spent hours and hours and hours doing moot debates, being Trump, deliberately doing things like walking into her space, stalking her, being as aggressive as possible so that she would be prepared and was comfortable going into these settings. So yes, I realize that that's what we're saying now. But what's really interesting to me is I don't know that anybody actually cares how she feels about Trump. What they care about is, what do you think about the country? What do you think about policy? What was the purpose of your campaign and the central message that we never understood what it was that you were going to do for the country, as well as perhaps the campaign would have wished they had been able to articulate this. And that would be a more compelling thing for her to write about, I think, than what she feels about Trump. Because honestly, we know that her skin crawled, but a lot of people's skin crawled thinking about Bill and Hillary's relationship with a lot of things. So creepiness of feeling is not really what's going to drive book sales.
But Aaron, everything that we've heard so far from Hillary Clinton after the election loss, commentary that she's made in public, it exemplifies and illustrates why she lost. She was calculating, and people couldn't figure out who she really was because she's got hot sauce in her purse one moment. She shape shifts, if you will.
Right. What I was thinking when I heard that excerpt was, this is the plight of the modern career woman. There are men in business, and women are, breaking through those glass ceilings, and that's a topic that every woman wants to talk about. And we all have our shared experience, but she is so hard to relate to and to sort of get the women to draw into her. So it's very, very difficult to connect with her because she didn't have a real identity. And that's what we just see more and more of. Instead of her becoming relatable and a real person, she just, as I said earlier, seems very robotic. And I think that's a big part of why she didn't win.
Zach, her identity is that she's a political animal. That's her identity.
Well, I mean, certainly that's part of her identity. I mean, she is a public figure, and I think that we think of her in those terms in large part because she is a woman, and it is fairly rare in political history.
You hear, if you talk privately with Democratic fundraisers, even leaders in the party, when they talk about who they're going to run in coming up on 3 years, you hear female names. You don't really hear them planning to run a man, which I find interesting.
I think there are plenty of men in the mix. However, I do think what you're noting is exactly right. There are a lot more women who are in the mix, and that is in large part because of the glass ceiling that Hillary Clinton broke. Like her or not, it is now not a weird thing for a woman to run for president of the United States, Democrat or Republican, and that is objectively a good thing.
Well, it's because they think they have a better shot with a woman running against Trump, and coming up on 3 years. We all remember Clinton's election party at the Javits Center. I drove by it actually as the crowds were pouring out. There were so many disappointed faces. I saw them driving up.
I was one of them.
I saw them driving up 10th Avenue, and it seems like Secretary Clinton really felt that disappointment. Listen to this.
Every day that I was a candidate for president, I knew that millions of people were counting on me, and I couldn't bear the idea of letting them down. But I did. I couldn't get the job done.
Heather, I'm still shocked to this day that she didn't step up and speak to her supporters in the Javits Center that night. Because again, if you run on this, I'm a strong woman, that was the very moment, as you know, if she's going, that she ran as a feminist, that's the very moment where she fell down on that promise to women.
I think it was surprising to many of us that she didn't, but my understanding, and Zach can obviously speak to this from personal knowledge far better than I as an outside observer. I think the first thing that was going on was that there had to be this just sort of huge psychological confusion because everyone was so convinced that she was going to win. The second thing was big differences about what she should say and whether they should contest.
Zach, you got 5 seconds.
I mean, yeah, it was a huge shock, but let's remember that she spoke early the next morning, and it was a shock.
She was holding it together. Zach Buchanan and Aaron Elmore, thank you both. We'll be right back.